this is something that we've been doing along the Front Range now for 20 years, is helping people build new custom homes. And we're happy to just sit down and answer as many questions as we possibly can. Whether or not we participate in building a new home for you, that's really immaterial. I think we can sit down and probably answer a lot of questions for anybody who's been through this, and at least maybe help to start to bring things into focus for what happens next. We're Denver-based custom home builder, but we build all along the Front Range. And the events of December 30th, the fire in Superior and the fire in Louisville, anybody who's in my business, anybody who's a builder, got to think long and hard about what to do and how to respond to what happened to 1,000 families who lost their homes in that situation. I think everybody in my business wants to reach out and help, and just there's an awful lot of questions about how to do that. And just maybe the best way for me to help, or maybe the best way for me to respond, is just share some random thoughts, the things that are kind of rattling around in my head about what to do and steps forward and things to think about, things to consider if you're in that situation where you're faced with the reality of having to replace the home that you lost. The first thing that comes to my mind is making sure that you've reached out to the utility companies, to Xcel Energy or whoever provided your gas and electric service, and make sure that everything is taken care of with respect to those disconnects and the billing. The disconnects were probably automatic to some degree. I'm sure that the utility companies came in very shortly after the fire and made sure that the gas lines were all shut down and made sure that electricity was all shut down. But the billing and the responsibility for those shutdowns and the fees that are associated with that, those are questions that you probably ought to try to reach out and get answered. The same thing is true with whoever provided the water and the sewer to your home. You'll want to find out how the utility companies are going to handle those things, and what billing responsibilities you're going to have, if any. So those are things to think about closing out if that's necessary. If you had a home that was built on a acreage, an estate type home that was built on acreage, and you had a septic system, and if you're going to rebuild, it's possible that septic system can be reused, but that's probably a question that's going to be best answered by the county health department, or by someone who is a specialist in soils and septic design. They can come out and assess what happened to the components of the septic system and determine whether or not parts of that system or all of that system can be reused. And the same thing is true if you were serviced by a well. If your domestic water came from a well, then you'll want to figure out if the components of that well are still intact, and if those components can be reused. As far as rebuilding, I know that there's a million questions that you'll probably want to get answers to. One thought that came to mind is if you've built in the last 15 years, perhaps the last 20 years, maybe even a little bit more than that, chances are very good that your city or your county actually has the plan set for your home. The digital version of that plan set is probably on file at the city or the county. It might not be a bad idea to get that plan set in hand. Sometimes just perusing that plan set, going through it room by room, can help you to remember things that you would otherwise forget. As you go through that plan set room by room, you can think about the things that were on the fireplace mantle, or the things that were on the shelf next to the fireplace, or the things that were on the piano, or whatever. The plan set, I think, provides a really nice visual document or a visual cue for you to help remember things associated or things that you had in that house prior to the fire. I think the plan set is also a good starting place for conversations about what you're going to do next, about whether or not you're going to rebuild. It gives you the opportunity to look at what you had, look at what you loved, look at what you didn't like about that previous home, and maybe you realize that if you're going to rebuild, the new homes, the closet in the new home, the master closet, is going to be 2 feet larger, or the banquette in the kitchen is going to be a couple of feet longer, or whatever. It just gives you the opportunity to look at those things and start to figure what you're going to do next. I think the other huge advantage of getting your hands on the plan set is I think it kind of represents hope. Sitting down and looking at the plans and looking at the house you loved on paper kind of gives you something to think about, gives you something to consider about what's next and how it'll be better, maybe better this time around. Chances are good, if you're going to rebuild, chances are good that some of the materials that'll go into the house, the insulation, the heating system, the cooling system, chances are very good that those materials will be better than they were in the original house, especially if the original house was built 20, 25, maybe 30 years ago. There's absolutely no doubt that the new heating system is going to be a more efficient heating system, and the new insulation system, the new insulation components that'll go into the house will be better than the components in that previous house, as well as the lighting fixtures and the lighting controls, the appliances, and all the other the little bits and pieces that made up the house. Chances are very good that the new stuff is going to be better than the old stuff. Again, these are random thoughts, and I think it was important. I felt it was important to just kind of share some of these random thoughts with whoever might be looking at this, and also to say that this is something that we've been doing along the Front Range now for 20 years, is helping people build new custom homes. And we're happy to just sit down and answer as many questions as we possibly can. Whether or not we participate in building a new home for you, that's really immaterial. I think we can sit down and probably answer a lot of questions for anybody who's been through this, and at least maybe help to start to bring things into focus for what happens next.